Boom, baby!
Welcome to the best movie review ever. My name is KuzCopia, which likely betrays what rank I will be giving this movie very promptly. I am a professional game developer and self-published author of many books, lifelong geek consuming all the medias except those you might find in reputable art museums. But I wasn't always a grown-ass child. No. Once upon a time, I was a young wee lad, but a young wee lad, when I first traveled out of my country to visit my uncle and husband in a far-flung, dire territory that I now reside in, England. In the process, I would visit London for 2 days, during which stay we would hit the theater to watch the brand new epic movie, Lord of the Rings, Fellowship of the Ring. The movie was so sick that it made me sick, and I had to stay home with fever for an entire day, losing out on much tourism. There, I found a cassette tape, which was the precursor technology to a DVD, and it shocked me to see the Disney logo on the cover of a movie I had never seen before. Promptly, I checked it out with my yet fledgling English understanding. I watched it again at night with everyone. I watched it again the next day, in the morning, before we left for more tourism. Never has a movie impacted me so, and indeed, countless years later, not that I can't count, I just don't like to, I will be talking about it. When an entirely new generation is at the age I was, and likely as not, has never heard of it, or watched it. Yes, we are transitioning from rated R crime dramas to the funniest, most heartful production that Disney ever pooped out its ever-increasingly corporate art factory. Today, we will review The Emperor's New Groove. If you've never watched it, just do it. I'm 100% confident you'll have a good time with it, and we'll get the rank out of the way since I trust you know where I'm going with it. The way we rank movies is by putting them on a suggestion grade scale, with a subgrade to make use of the plus-minus system. Starting with must rewatch, which would be an S, followed by must watch, can rewatch, can watch, should not rewatch, should not watch, do not rewatch, and do not watch, which I consider to be trash grade. I rank this movie as an easy must rewatch, easy peasy S+. Buy it in every format and take it home and put them all on a pedestal. I mean, I'm not doing all that, but do not let my detachment from corporeal reality and all its founts of joy detract from that genuine suggestion. Let's get into why. There are plenty of retrospectives about Disney animations out there, in-depth analysis on every movie and what might colloquially be referred to as the different phases or waves of movies, the eras, from Sleeping Beauty to The Lion King to Hercules to Tangled, and perhaps there's an arguable, super short era between the 90s and computer graphics within which you would find this movie. The early 2000s that start right after Mulan, pretty much with Emperor's New Groove, and ends with Brother Bear. Yeah, this was a thing, and Joaquin Phoenix was in it, by the way. This mini-era came in alongside all the other cult classics that get comparably way less love than the rest of the Disney catalog before and after. Atlantis, Treasure Planet, Lilo and Stitch, movies which had to fight box office with rapidly improving competition. Pixar, acquired during this era, but still competing in my opinion since the worker shuffle would only really impact the CGI era, would be my uneducated guess. DreamWorks, always the greatest competitor in this time, they made El Dorado and Spirit and Prince of Egypt. And 20th Century came out with Ice Age. But oh my me, do I digress. What my point was going to be is that if you want to know making-of details and curiosities about this movie, plenty of videos are out there to explain how this movie came about, all of that stuff. I am to understand that actually there's a lot of parallels between this and the Ghostbusters in the sense that much of it was ad-libbed, like pure showmanship on the day. But if you're interested in any of that, this isn't the video. I'm a huge proponent of Death of the Doctor, and with productions involving so many bloody people in such a long time, the lightning either cracks the bottle or it doesn't. Or, most often, there is no lightning in the bottle. Sometimes there's even a little bit of venom in there. Anyway, I want to talk about the product as we consume it. The effect, not the cause of this production. The story, the funny, the energy, the aura. As I mentioned people's names, do forgive any bad pronunciation, and keep in mind that most everyone mentioned are Disney lifers. These guys' IMDb's are perma-active before and after this movie, starting with the art directors. Every other movie is just a character name or a place name, but this movie is called The Emperor's New Groove, and it is so fitting. This whole cartoon is the most colorful, vivacious carnival dance of spasmodious energy Disney has ever produced. The are there frames missing snappy fluidity, the flashy color palette of reds and yellows, the heavily defined, silhouetted characters. I don't have the technical know-how to properly put words to everything it does, but the art is just a joy to watch and succeeds in illustrating what is arguably the most fun-oriented movie in Disney's entire catalog. It is almost as part of the storytelling at times as music would be in other movies, with so many visual gags and visual storytelling that can only stand to lose in any other medium but animation. There's a lot about this movie that only works as animation. It stays in your mind so very much like The Lion King or Hercules, and it does so without the assistance of tear-jerking Shakespearean moments. Great praise from a complete layman. Art direction is credited to Thomas Cardone, Colin Stimpson, storyboard by Ben Gluck. About the music very shortly. The opening song is iconic and will stay with the audience probably forever. Perfect World, which I understand was composed by Dave Artley and Sting, intending for Sting to sing it, but was in the end sung by Tom Jones to get more of that Las Vegas showmanship sound going, is great. However, I have to say, outside of this iconic song, what we get is a typical movie soundtrack that masterfully blends into the animation and into the scenes, following the gags and action with either deadly tension or circus tomfoolery. Cannot recall a single theme, as industry mega veteran John Dabney just delivers a score that supports everything else that is happening and doesn't get in the way or try to steal its thunder. Which I guess is a good thing, because there is a lot of thunder and there's only enough bottle to go around. Could they have done more? Better? Who knows? All I can say is that Perfect World and its reprisal greatly encapsulate our story in a neat bow for those less understanding members of the audience, or just people who go so much into the comedy that they don't see the forest for the trees, the story for the jokes. Segueing cast. The main cast of this movie amounts to a whopping tight 4. Kuzco, our titular emperor over whom a new kind of groove takes hold. Pacha, the worldly and responsible large family man who fathers Kuzco as a mentor and friend. Yzma, the reproachable villainess who was born and raised to become empress if only she had the hereditary mandate, and who chooses, upon its absence, to start a new one herself. And Kronk, one of the greatest heart-of-gold dummy ever put to screen, and primary grunt at Yzma's employ, who eventually redeems himself. Chicha Chacha Tipo are Pacha's family unit, the heart and soul of his character and really everything a man can aspire to have in his life. Also, of note, pretty sure Chicha is the first pregnant lady to hold such a prominent role in a family movie. Definitely the first or maybe only one to be super active. So, I'll start by saying that Eartha Kitt absolutely steals the show here. A career singer and voice actress, she blows the character of Yzma absolutely out of the park. The gags, the ever-increasing frustration with the always confounding situations.
Smash it with a hammer! It's brilliant, 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 I tell you! Genius, I say!
While I love the rest of the cast, their voice work is fast recognizable as soon as you mention their names. John Goodman as Pacha, David Spade as Kuzco, and Patrick Warburton as Kronk. David Spade easily navigates between childish squirming and glee and a young moral maturity, wearing the character development on the sleeves of likability that never gets lessened by whatever annoying noise is making.
Yes!
Goodman has that measured, long-lived tone of voice of someone who isn't shaken by setbacks and finds it easy to meet childish outbursts with a pacifying fatherness. His is a constant paternal presence that, once taken too far, withdraws, and that is his greatest punishment, to just withdraw and abandon you.
He's a lousy llama. I mean, a really lousy llama.
Warburton has a much parodied voice, and no wonder. I'm happy Kronk came up before that Bees movie dude who gave us that most prized of meme. I can imagine an entire building of light bulbs coming on when they first heard this guy read the line for Kronk, if he even had to.
Oh yeah, It's all coming together.
Here's the credits for Wife and Kids. They're great, they're fun, personable, and whatnot. They do a great job.
I'm as big as you were when you were me. That's not as impressive as my loose tooth.
That kind of behavior, I gotta go wash something.
But final shout out to Eartha, man, like a double tap on that talent. Like I said, the guys are good, but it's just their voices. This old girl, though, really went to town. The old adage goes that comedy just never gets any credit for the talent involved, hence why every comedian just wants a good drama, or at least moments, so they can get some awards. Her Yzma performance is really godlike, despite the fact that it's all just for laughs. It is so good.
Pull the lever, Crunk.
Alright, writing. Let's get to the meat of the video. There's a full football team of people credited for writing this thing, which is something I just don't personally believe in. I don't want to credit someone who might have just contributed a single joke. So here's a screenshot of the IMDb, and let's get to it. I read that website just perfectly. Did you like how I pronounced IMDb? Of the comedy. Now, this is a very visual movie, and most gags only work because of animation and voice acting.
That's it, Crunk. Break the door down.
Break it down. What are you kidding me? This is hand-carved mahogany.
I don't care, you fool. Get out of my way.
But technically, they will have been scripted, storyboarded, or otherwise written in some napkin the day before going into a booth. So let's talk about it here. The jokes are tight, in that they happen in delay-absent succession unless they need the breathing room to get the penny drop timed correctly. Personable in that they can be relatable and contextual. Characteristic in that characters don't get broken for the sake of the joke. For instance, there's no joke suddenly pretending Pacha is a bad dad or husband. They sometimes run like an avalanche, they sometimes massage with patience. Callbacks, pure banter, pure flame, pure gag. The pacing of the entire movie is like a hearty bit of laughter, with pauses to breathe and crescendos of yelling, rapturous gasping, and just a huge smile at the end as we see the terrible villainess have the last word as a somewhat forgiven, cuddly kitten. Hard to think of something that matches these many laughs in its short runtime outside of the best stand-up specials. And to be fair, this was the approach of the day. Comedy. After all, why get Eddie Murphy, at one time the world's most prolific comedian, to voice in Mulan just a year before? The aim of this animation era was largely to find a comedic stripe and mine it as well as possible. Laughter, not singing, was the new goal. Soon we would see Eddie Murphy practically starring in the legendary Shrek, and in that same year we would see the release of Monsters Inc., which primary premise was about fueling a world with laughter rather than screams, and also featured a comedian in a primary role. Alas, that spirit would quickly wane throughout the rest of the decades. Zoomers will have grown up pretty much unaware that there was ever a dramaless comedic focus in mainstream entertainment, let alone movies. But oh my me, do I digress. This is why this movie stands out from the rest of its era and its peers. Because not only did they have a comedian in the titular role, rather than as comic relief support, but in the middle of it all, they still managed to write such a good and unique story. This is the only aspect where I might be interested in knowing the making of. If I didn't know, it's very likely purely by accident and my own interpretation, have you realized the name of this channel, that Kuzco's story is so powerfully relatable to me, despite its very underdramatic tone. I mean, do you want to see the saddest moment in this movie?
Who are you kidding, pal? They saw the whole thing, they know what happened.
This is it. From here, he goes to try and be a llama, comically fails, and Pacha is there and offers to help him, and we slide right into the third act and all its hijinks. So anyway, my main point being, did you perhaps notice the lack of a princess? Of course, this is a Disney movie. I recognize the absolute buffoonery of claiming this is my favorite movie when it's in the princesless era, and indeed doesn't even have a female main role, a romantic interest, nothing but the pregnant wife of Pacha, a very good woman who saves their bacon and kisses them on their way, which, by the way, is every man's heartfelt desire no matter how much their ego might convince them otherwise. I'm all over the place. I love this movie so much. Synopsis, structure, let's hit it. Let's get this under control. Kuzco is some kind of orphan teen emperor who has been pampered since he was a baby. I assume he's a teen, maybe he's a young adult. Never was he pampered by any parental figure, though. He has been doted on every single second of his life, partly implicitly by Yzma,
How could he do this to me? Why, I practically raised him.
who he fires upon finding out she has been covertly ruling in his place and sitting on his throne, in complete disregard to her many years of service. At the same time, he wishes to build a vacation home on a particular mountain. He calls up someone who lives on that mountain to tell him how nice it is, and only then does he reveal he intends to evict them all and build his pool house that he can maybe visit once for some good fun. This is Pacha, the village leader. Yzma, because of how she was scorned, decides to poison Kuzco and kill him. So, in a very hilarious scene, which kinda redundant to say every scene is hilarious, especially featuring these two, Kronk mistakes the poison and instead gives him something that turns him into a llama.
What? A llama?
Yzma commands Kronk to kill Kuzco, but Kronk proves too good-hearted to allow that to happen. So Kuzco ends up in Pacha's cart that he takes back to his village. Obviously, he commands him to take Kuzco back to the palace, but Pacha makes him promise to renege on his plans to build a beach house, the pool house, the whatever is going to get them evicted. Obviously, Kuzco agrees and promises as much, while actually intending to throw him in jail immediately for disobeying him. They set out towards the palace, and meanwhile, Kuzco has no idea Yzma is the one behind everything. Yzma finds out he's alive, so she sets out with Kronk to kill him. Chase and hijinks ensue, where Pacha and Kuzco are always at odds because Kuzco is an arrogant little brat, and Pacha isn't the servant the Emperor expected everyone in the world to be. Treats him as a human being. It's a very annoying, asshole human being. So we get this set of funny circumstances where Kuzco finds Yzma and Kronk looking for him, assumes Pacha doesn't really want to help him to save his home, yells and accuses him of such, but then finds out they wanted to kill him before revealing himself. Pacha is then gone for good. So then we get to that point I showed you before. The fact Pacha forgives Kuzco and decides to help him even if he's lying, because it's just the right thing to do to get the kid back to normal, knocks the final nail in the new and matured Kuzco. By the time they get back, succeed over Yzma, and go back to normal, Kuzco just builds his vacation home on the inhabited part of the mountain, so not only he, but all of the village can enjoy it. And this is how the movie ends. What I love so much about this story is that, well, we have seen the trope of the heart of gold protagonist who nonetheless deceives or lies to get something he wants, which is either the romantic interest or something to get the romantic interest. And then he gets found out, and seeing the romantic interest mad and upset makes him change attitude and reprioritize his entire moral being. We've seen this many times in many forms. Aladdin, Lion King. The trope has ever been that the guy was overall good but had a flaw, and in order to win the love of his life, or to save them, or some other variation of motivating factor centered around the love interest, he fixes the flaw and fully fleshes out the goodness in him. Hercules, Beauty and the Beast, frickin' Wall-E. It's not every movie, of course. Little Mermaid, Treasure Planet, and a few others, but they don't touch things in the way this one does. To clarify, our protagonist does not have a heart of gold. Like, at all. Our guy's kicking elderlies out of towers and thrones, snubbing women who want to be in his harem with terrible remarks. Listen to this.
Hate your hair. Not likely. Yikes, yikes, yikes. And let me guess, you have a great personality.
Yeah, this guy's no Aladdin sharing bread with homeless children coveting the one woman in the world. There's no golden heart hidden inside an only apparent emotionless exterior. Kuzco's confidence made him likable despite a horrible personality, which is what happens. And even when Pacha, the fuzzy, perfectly sociable, friendly comrade, sacrifices for his sake, that doesn't change him, even faze him. That's what happens when you feel entitled to everyone's attention and efforts and lives. Kuzco was favored the most greatly by life for no apparent reason, having done nothing to deserve it. This is what happens. So, Kuzco had no capacity for selfless sacrifice, or any interest for that matter. What would he be sacrificing for when he is the most important thing in the world? Raised to be that way, that's who he was, Emperor Kuzco. So this is great. It's great that he's not just polishing a bad quality out of an otherwise pretty saintly character. No, he's actually a pretty crappy character.
I was always taught that there was some good in everyone, but you proved me wrong.
Oh, boo-hoo. Now I feel really bad. Bad llama.
So he does change. He legitimately changes as a person, and he isn't changed by a love interest, by a father, a mother, a friend, or a mentor. Not even Pacha, ultimately. He changes on his own, because of himself. Like, he looks at himself, he looks at his choices, what he had done.
Well, you got a point. No one really seems to care that he's gone, do they?
In the middle of all the self-pity, he feels legitimate regret. Because, and I love this, not because of his situation, but because he finds compassion. He develops compassion because of his situation. This is how they felt. This is how Pacha felt. The sadness, the despair that I feel now, they were feeling because of me. That's what makes him change. What happened was the most human form of extrapolation, of transformative emotional connection. This is how it feels. And this horrible feeling is what I gave to Pacha and his wife and those 3 little kids with my stupid eviction notice for no reason. Compassion, not love or horniness or guilt or death or vengeance or irony or anything else but compassion changed him, and changed him thoroughly to his core. Of course, this is only possible because of Pacha. Pacha did what none of us should ever do in real life, and 1,000 times more with online relationships. Alright, kids? He ignored all the red flags. My guy did the right thing by this young man despite the fact that the young man was an emperor with power and riches that no one can even imagine, let alone a poor village. Well, not any, a lot of people in this world can imagine. We can't. Me and you, we cannot. This, of course, played a part. Kuzco feels compassion because he likes Pacha and his loyalty, righteousness, and good character, and of course, imagining him suffering will have a greater impact than imagining Isma suffering, for instance. Of course, it plays a part, and that itself is also a wonderful reminder, a beautifully crafted and lifelike illustration of the importance and powerful value of being kind and expecting nothing in return, even to those who seem to have everything that we do not. What I meant, the warning before, is because people will very easily take advantage of you. I just want to put a quick, addendum. This is real life, not a cartoon. Watch over yourself. Watch over what people can do if you just mindlessly kind. I don't think this is the case here, but I imagine as I'm hyping up the ideal, the moral standard, the high moral standard that we should aspire to, which is kindness and compassion, I don't want you to victimize yourself in that way and to just let yourself be run over by other people. So I'm just putting this addendum. In real life, approach things with care and with thought and with consideration, with some critical evaluation and judgment of who you're dealing with and what they might do to you and how much you can actually trust them. Pacha clearly was very trustworthy in this situation. Because when he wasn't, that actually wasn't an effect. So when Pacha expects to not get evicted in return, when he is essentially blackmailing Kuzco, his help, his assistance, his sacrifice has no real impact on the Emperor's character. It's only when he agrees to save Kuzco and does so, even when he expects to be evicted, that carries a true impact. And that can happen, and even in real life, I guarantee you that can happen. This level of kindness and compassion to someone who really needs it can really make an enormous difference. And if you've been in Kuzco's shoes, you know this. You know this very well. A good character can go a long way to helping others be better, even good, and it's fantastic to see that role being played by a paternal figure whose character development is, indeed, just to extern his paternal instincts to the village, aka those who need it, other than just his family. I'm not gonna go into a cultural discussion there. I hope I'm articulating the dynamics here well enough. Kuzco doesn't get changed by Pacha hating him, insulting him, othering him, and, if I may fully today times my point, checking his privilege. Kuzco gets changed exactly by the opposite. Humanization. Literally humanization, guys. Pacha helps him get humanized. It's beautiful. Kronk, too, tells a nifty little story about being on the odd end of a toxic, abusive relationship where he only feels right when he's making Yzma proud or glad, even though she is impossible to please.
I know. It's called a cruel irony, like my dependence on you.
As should be the case for an avatar of villainy. Unhappiness and unsatisfaction controls the hearts of villains, always, and always they destroy themselves and their relationships. It is important to also note that there's no need to dehumanize and other Yzma. She does it to herself. That is her potion. We see this happen in the relationship of these two as Yzma turns on her most loyal supporter, Kronk, so hard that it finally snaps him out of her chains so he can finally do what he feels is right instead of trying to do what he feels she will like. Finally, Chicha is super active, full of energy, with super active kids, full of energy. She runs a family home full of life and adventure. Just 3 people inside a small place feel so much more adventurous than an enormous palace filled with hundreds of people. While we see a lot of movement in Kuzco's palace and in Yzma's, we see little energy, very little genuine joy. But this is what these characters bring to the table. Indeed, a world worth blackmailing an emperor for. Indeed, a world an emperor might elect not to destroy. Indeed, a world anyone might want to aspire to. Instead of filling people's heads with stories of divorce and terrible marriages, and cartoons full of single parents, this is what I'd like to see a lot more of, and something like we never get. The dynamic of putting kids to bed, having a small argument about possible eviction, embracing in support, kissing goodbye. Moments that are hard to see in these categorized family movies of today. Moments Kuzco probably never saw or experience before entering Pacha's house. And perhaps, if I may indulge, moments I never saw before watching this movie. Conclusion. Everyone has their singular experience with art, their individual takeaways. I would not be surprised if all my takeaways weren't even subconsciously in the mind of the creators of this movie, but that's alright, because what would surprise me would be to find out people were just clocking in and didn't really care about what they were doing. This movie looks and feels like a project of massive passion being made by happy people having fun, moments of stress and argument notwithstanding. A very rare sight nowadays, and I would think the primary reason why we see the odd movies be super successful. You know, when people like what they're making and who they're making it for, it seems to go a long bloody way into making a good thing. Shocking, I know. I think what they made here was the most accessible, funniest movie about the most wholesome character values. The Emperor's New Groove is memorable, relatable, inspirational, teachable, and so funny. I love this movie, and it's my heartfelt desire that it's never forgotten. It's just too funny and endearing to be lost to time. Alright, this was truly a treat. I hope you'll come back for the next video. This is KuzCopia signing out. Take care.